I did not want to work for another employer. That wasn't going to answer my issues. More money wasn't going to answer my issues. Owning my time was going to fix my issues. Being able to go do something in the middle of the summer, which was a big no-no at the theater, was the goal.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right, welcome back to another show of the Gentle Art of Crushing It. My name is Nathan with Undoor Properties, and I am your Monday host. And today I'm super excited. We're going to learn so much from Tom. Tom was able to get into 19 properties, never making more than 80 grand a year. He's a house hacker, an eBay flipper, creative real estate investor. I definitely want to hear about your stories about flipping bras to buy a house or how you got into a house for $6,500. So Tom, also known as the Frugal Gay on most social media platforms. Tom, welcome. So happy to have you today. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I gave a few tidbits here, but I want to hear the full story. Who's Tom? Who's the Frugal Gay? What's your background? Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Tom Brickman. I'm 40 years old and I live in Dallas, Texas. I got into real estate because I wanted to live cheaper at 21, and I bought a duplex. I had been purchasing Gap stock. I worked at the Gap during high school and college, and it helped me pay for college. And I cashed in all my Gap stock, and I purchased that first duplex at 21 with a $10,000 down payment. And I lived in the upstairs. It was a $90,000 duplex. And I rented out the downstairs, and my payment was $738. And my tenant downstairs paid $600. So that kind of was nice up until that first winter when the furnace went out, and I learned real quick how expensive landlording can get.
Ouch.
Yeah, so that was the beginning and the origins. I continued to buy real estate because I saw when I bought a dud after that in Cleveland. But I did start buying in Dallas when I moved down here for work. In 2009 was my first purchase. And I saw the power to escape paying these really high rents by buying the stuff that the other investors ignored. So I went after the low-hanging fruit, the condos, and that type of property that was super distressed and super undesirable and needed a lot of work, because that's the point of entry that I could get at without having 18 other investors bidding against me. It just snowballed. And in 2009, I just made it a goal that every year I'm going to buy a property. I did not want to work at the movie theater. That's what I did for 15 and a half years. I got out of college. I started at a movie theater. They moved me down to Texas. And I purchased a property a year. And they started in the really, really low range, because I was in 2009, 2010 when stuff was $9,000, $14,000. And then as I've progressed, I've gotten rid of the ones that aren't necessarily great, and I've traded those into small multifamilies or commercial spaces, or I've done some trading up over the years. And currently I'm at 23 doors, and I'm working on 2 of them right now. So I'm actually collecting rent from 19 this month, and I've got 1 vacant that I'm also working on.
Congratulations on all the success there. I love it. And in this, because you touched on so many things, right? I don't even know where to start here with your journey here, but I'm interested to hear, if, amongst all those things, right? What's your favorite success story that you like to share with others, and what did you learn from that?
So I have a couple, but I had a hoarder house, and then I had an abandoned commercial space, and both of those were hit them out of the park home runs. I would have to pick the hoarder house because I showed it to another investor trying to sell it to them to help my friend out. It was his mother-in-law's. It was left to him when she passed away. He wanted nothing to do with it. And the other investor's like, I can give you 100 for this. And I'm like, he owes 130. That's not going to work. So I got the dumpsters and I did it myself. Everyone except for one person in the neighborhood was excited because the house was such an eyesore for 5 years. And I ran out of money mid-project. The majority of the hoarded stuff had to be thrown away because we had holes in the roof. And I muddled through that process for 6 months in the Texas heat. And when everything was said and done, I can say I would never do another hoarder house, but I made a ton of equity in the deal by doing it and running out of money because I got creative. And when it got to some of these projects, I was in there painting and pulling up carpet and really blood, sweat, and tears into the project. And it just is one of my favorites in my portfolio. And it just appreciated like crazy right outside of Dallas. So it was the right time, the right project, and it's a great property for me. It's a home run. And the commercial space was a similar circumstance where it was just poorly listed and ignored, and we couldn't get a traditional loan on it. So we pulled a HELOC from another property, brought it over here, bought this property cash with our HELOC money, and we renovated it unit by unit. And that retail space was a pizza shop. It had been empty for almost 15 years, and we put it up for rent. We had like 40 people asking for it the first weekend. So it was one of those that was just an eyesore that we were able to, in both cases, they were eyesores. And we were able to see, hey, this is on a great street or in a great neighborhood. There's some value here. Yes, it's ugly right now, but we can make this thing nice. And they were both time consuming and not fun during the process, but the end result speaks for itself.
I'm curious to hear, because you just said it was in a great street, great location, right? How come no one else saw that? What did you see, or what advantage did you have to notice that there was potential here or there, I guess, and to actually go through with this deal?
So the commercial space was poor. This was 2019, so it wasn't quite as hot. This was in Toledo, Ohio, and this was listed as a 1-bedroom, 5,000 square foot unit. And it was listed as residential.
Big bedroom.
That's what I said. I'm like, well, it's got 5 bathrooms and 1 bedroom. I think that this is off. And it was listed as residential. So the commercial side wasn't even looking at it because it was in that residential side. And it was neglected. It was ugly. And everything unraveled when we got to the closing table because the owners were about to lose it to a tax foreclosure, and they were just like done. They were collecting very little rent. They weren't trying. They didn't have it insured when we bought it. So when it got to the closing table and we actually closed, it all made sense of why it was poorly thrown up, because they were just throwing it up in hopes of not losing it to a tax foreclosure. It was just one of those. Toledo has a history. It's a declining market, a very small declining market, where there's a ton of retail available, but people don't spend money in the retail to maintain it. And the second that we put some money in, we had, like I said, a ton of people that are like, hey, I want to do a barbershop here. I want to do this. I want to do that. And that's what, seeing what others can't see. That hoarder house was ugly, nasty, gross. But once you did, I had 2 different landscapers working on the property because it was just so overgrown. And once you uncovered it, it was a great property. And same with the retail space. It was a great property once we got some paint in and some lights in and redid flooring and just, it looks nice on that corner now. And it's not the eyesore that it was when we purchased it.
Wonderful. And I guess another question here, because it's interesting, like most people that we talk to when they, invest in real estate, they often have like a preferred niche in real estate, be it Airbnb, commercial, storage units, single family, duplexes, note investing, you name it, right? And from what you're describing, you've done house hacking, you've done commercial, you've done flipping. I think you have a few single family homes in your portfolio as well. So it almost sounds like you're the opposite of like specializing in anything.
But I'm staying in my markets. I'm in Dallas and Toledo, Ohio, and I'm not venturing outside of those. And yes, I've dabbled in all of that. And right now I'm doing a foreclosure. So note investing definitely does not attract me because I've done the rent to own with tenants, and some have worked out great and they're property owners now, and some have not worked out great. That was just trial and error. And the commercial space, when I was looking on Zillow. So I was looking for residential, and it was just poorly listed, and it wasn't, I'm set to do commercial. And same with, there were a couple of bumps along the road. I bought a crack house on eBay, unknowing that it was a crack house when I bought it. I probably should have just walked away from that at the beginning, but I am the stubborn type that just saw the project through, and it was the nicest one on the block and rented it. So there isn't a great answer besides my strategy was, what do I have access to? And at that time, that commercial space made sense. At the time, the hoarder house made sense. The crack house made sense. There were so many different properties along the way. And these were the things that an abandoned retail space scared people away. So I had no other competition of people wanting to bid on it, especially with it being listed as residential, because they're like, and we took it to a bank and they're like, we're not going to loan anything on that. So that's why we got creative and we went and we're like, well, we have this one that's paid off. We could probably pull a HELOC and do this and do that. So that was what was available. And that's what kind of steered the boat that way.
I'm curious again, so similar vein, right? But I feel like most people in situations like this, seeing an incorrectly listed property on Zillow, right? Or I don't even know who would just venture to go buy a property on eBay, and even less so if it was a known crack house, which obviously probably wasn't listed as such. But how come you're not afraid to just seemingly jump in with both feet?
I feel like at this point that I've pretty much, like, even last year I bought a property that was a bank owned and the pipes were frozen, and I'm like, I've done this 3 times. I know what the cost is going to be. I know how to fix it, and I've muddled through it. So I think it's been the trial and error, because at this point I've fixed the foundations, redone roofs, had failing water. I just did a sewer line that was thousands and thousands of dollars, but it was kind of a sigh of relief when I handed them the check, even though it was a lot of money, because it was part of why the foundation was failing, because the rest of the house was sinking into the middle where the leak was happening. And it had been years and years. It wasn't like the leak had just happened. I just purchased the property, but I've muddled through the majority of this, so it doesn't scare me that much. And it's always been one of those that I'll figure it out as I go. And just to back up onto the crack house that I bought on eBay, I knew the zip code. I did not know the streets. And that was where I messed up. And as I got off the highway to go look at it after I had closed and purchased, I'm like, I'm going the wrong way. I know where, I'm like, I thought this was over here and it's on the wrong side. And it wasn't what I expected. And it wasn't where I was, but it worked out okay in the end.
Yeah. And I think that's the message that people need to hear, right? That I guess ultimately everything works out in the end if you take the long enough view. But I'm curious if there's a point in time, and maybe you just can't tell, I have no idea, but because you've been investing for many years now, obviously, right? Do you remember or know of a point in time when maybe that mindset has shifted from whatever it was, maybe being scared like most people when they buy their first, second, or third property, to like that mindset you're just referencing of, yeah, I've done it all. I've seen it all. I've tried it all. So this is fine. I could just take this on. Do you remember, or do you know of a point in time where that happened?
Yeah, I bought a bank owned in 2011, and it was like took everything out of me to get it over the finish line. And this was in Dallas, and it had been empty for over a year, and it had everything wrong in it as we went through. And I used every penny I had to purchase this property and put down the down payment. And at that point, I'm like, I'm just going to figure this out as we go. And we started with like the immediate fires in that property, which were the broken pipes in the walls. And then we got one air conditioner and furnace working upstairs. And, I muddled through it. And it was a process, and it was expensive, and it was draining. But I'm like, that was the one that I'm like, okay, I got through this. It looks pretty awesome here a year later. And I've done that over and over again, where they start out and they're kind of a nightmare, and they're the eyesore on the block, or they're out of commission. Like the one that I bought with the broken pipes last year, that had sat empty for 2 years. And half of my battle was getting the electric turned on, because I had to get special permits and inspections just to get it turned on, because it had been off for so many years. So putting these things back in commission, it just kind of came as I went. And like, we had the water on, but we had to keep the water off at the street because it was just pouring through my neighbor's walls. It was a townhouse. So that was the one that I'm like, we got through this. I think we can muddle through another one. And yes, I've definitely hit some road bumps along the way, and I've had contractors ghost me after I've paid them, and I've had all kinds of nightmares along the way, but it's kind of shaped what I feel like my scope of work and what I can handle and what I can't handle is possible.
Yeah, totally. And in all these properties and stories that you've bought here, is there Is there one in particular that you feel like was like your horror story, like worst nightmare, hard times that you had to go through? I'm curious to hear that one. And then maybe more importantly, what you learned from that and what you do differently now.
Yeah, I had a really rough one last year, and I had a really rough one when I bought that crack house. And I'll just share the crack house one because my dad got out of the car and he's like, "How much did you pay for this?" And I'm like, $13,500. He's like, "I would lose the $13,500 and I would turn away and run and never look back." And I'm stubborn and I'm like, "Nope, we're going to do it." And it was a very hard process. We had people knocking on the doors trying to buy stuff from us while we were working on it. We had a shooting in the backyard while my contractor was upstairs working on a toilet. So we had quite an experience there. And it was draining. It was expensive. Everything was more expensive because we would be fixing things that we had already fixed. And we literally had a bullet hole dodged through a window that we had replaced into the dining room. It turned out okay. It was one of the nicest one on the block. And that's where I've always kind of excelled with anything in the rough area. If I'm going to make it work in that area and I don't buy D-class properties, that was something I didn't even know that I was buying till I bought it. It's turned out okay. It's turned out where, I have 10 tenants that want to rent it, and then I can be selective when I am renting it because I have the nicest one on the block. And that's been where I've been able to excel. And then same with this is a problem. Like I needed a roof on that. And I'm like, well, I don't have an extra at the time. I think it was 7,000, but I'm like, but I have 3,000. So we ended up doing the front half of the roof then because I had the 3,000. And then we went back the next year and we did the back half of the roof. So it's, how can we make it work? You know what? I'm not going to borrow and I don't have the extra money, but I do have this 3,000. So that made it work because that was the biggest issue was the front half of the roof. And that's why we did that. So it's, you get creative, you get to do different projects and different designs in every one. And then you learn and you pivot and you don't make that same mistake twice. Like there's certain finishes that I'll never use again, even though they look trendy and nice. They wear out after one turn. So I don't want to be slapping down $6,000 worth of flooring just because it looks nice every year, because that just ate up the profit that I did. And as I muddled through this, I learned that stuff the hard way and I don't do it again.
What do you tell yourself? What do you keep in mind, I guess, hearing all these stories and, going through all these, crazy adventures in a sense, I guess, you're still going, right? You're buying more properties. You said you wanted to buy one a year. I don't know if that's changed or not, but what do you tell yourself? What do you keep in mind? What drives you, I guess, to just continue on despite a crack house?
I did not want to work for another employer. My goal was that wasn't going to answer my issues. More money wasn't going to answer my issues. Owning my time was going to fix my issues. Being able to go do something in the middle of the summer, which was a big no-no at the theater, was the goal. So as I venture down this, and I've bought 3 this year with a 4th under contract, I know that I don't want to go back to that or don't want to go to traditional work again. And this was my answer. And this can be fun and it can be horrific. And it's the mix in the middle that I enjoy when I have a tenant that, like, one of my roughest, cheapest properties is my favorite tenant because she's just like a joy to go see every time we go pick up rent. And I do have 2 tenants that I still pick up rent from, but she has a garden and she takes care of the house better than I could take care of the house. So I think that that's what kept me going is, yes, I'm going to have some bad tenants and I'm going to have tenants that steal the appliances to go pay rent and all kinds of incidents over the years. But I also have some great ones. And I have some, like, with that great tenant, she's like, my husband passed away. I can't take care of a house properly. This is why I want this property. And she told me all this when she rented it. And it's worked out great. I think she's been there almost 3 years now. And it was perfect for her. So I gave her a nice, clean, safe home. She's the first one on the list when it snows. So we have the snow removal for her and the yard care for her because she can't be out there mowing and she can't be out there shoveling. And I love being in that position to give her a safe, clean home and do upgrades around the property for her. And she loves it too, because she takes care of the property. So I think that was the driving force with, I'm going to keep going. Yes, we have those bad spells. And yes, I've inherited bad tenants. I've inherited landlords that, the one that I'm dealing with now with the drain line that's been leaking under the house for years. That was a problem that they knew a little bit and did a little Band-Aid on, but didn't do the full fix. So, it comes with the territory, and I'm fixing it, and I'm making that a great property on the street, and it'll be one of the nicer ones on the street. So I like the freedom that it gives me, and I like, being able to say, hey, that one down there, the one that everyone likes, that one's mine. And I like when there was a neighborhood that I started in Dallas a couple years ago, and I did what no one else did, and I painted my house blue and yellow. And then all the flippers came in behind me, and now there's like 10 blue and yellow houses on the street because they liked the design. And I'm like, I started that before anyone had this blue and yellow. So I like that as well.
Awesome. And maybe a good segue from that. I'm curious if, how your definition of success, I guess, has changed over time for you, if at all, right? But it sounds like now you're just sharing with us how you, continue on and get the next one and the next one. Was that what was driving you, 20 years ago?
Yeah, it was definitely different 20 years ago. It was a money thing. And the further I go down this, I realize that the money really doesn't matter, or the equity or that. It's the owning your time. It's having the freedom. And last summer, when my grandpa passed away, it was like a sigh of relief to be able to go sit with grandma in the middle of the week in July and not have to stress over checking work emails, responding to a boss. And that was the goal. That was the goal, to be able to own my time. I went and powered down social media last week, and I sat with my sister right now who's dealing with cancer. So owning my time is much more valuable than the money in the bank, in my opinion. I know that I need the money to pay the bills, to keep everything going, and that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. But having ownership and being able to do a weekend trip if I want to without asking anyone is really where I'm at with success, because that has changed my views from 20 years ago, definitely.
Wow. And I'm curious, if you have all this real estate, right, it's obviously, generating income for yourself, right? Why continue eBay? I guess you were telling me a story before we hit record, and I why I'm asking the question, I guess, because I like the creativity, but also the mindset that maybe not as traditional as what we typically hear in real estate, where it's like you're on this journey to get to your financial freedom, and then when you're there, you're done, you quit your job, you quit everything, and you can live free, right? Yet you're not doing that.
I'm not. I'm continuing. First of all, eBay is my safety blanket. That's what I love to say about eBay. I can slap vacation mode on eBay for as long or as little as I want. I can let sales come through while I'm on a vacation. I can, I do fulfill my own orders, but I do have an employee that can come, and if I slap vacation on and I've got 10 orders that came in that week, she can come in and grab those and ship those out once a week. So I have designed it where I can do it as little or as much as I want. And last August, I had a really expensive month where just money was just going as quick as it was coming in. And I'm like, I need to ramp up eBay. And that's the nice thing about having it, was I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend time doing this, and I'm going to do this. Because I'm one of those with my eBay stuff. I really don't do the hot, quick sale items. I do the items that are discontinued, and they increase in value over the length of time you hold off on listing it. And I'm always buying out of season, and I'll do discontinued scents from Bath and Body Works. I'll do discontinued scents from Victoria's Secret. I'll do discontinued items from Gap. And these are items that I've just leaned in on because I have a background in retail. So you kind of see the patterns and see how things get discontinued. And I don't throw them up immediately when I buy them. I wait for them to be further discontinued, or the other resellers to sell through their product, making my product more valuable. So I am a buy and hold investor for real estate. I'm a buy and hold investor for eBay. I'm going to hold those items until they go up a little bit in value. And that has always been my strategy. I started in college with purses. They were $1.50 purse that I was selling for $60 or $70 a purse. And it was because they were a very well-known purse that was a $80 purse, but nobody else had them. So I was able to sell them for $60 to $70. And when I have that expensive month, I can ramp it up. And it's one of those that this is where my roots are. I started with eBay. I started with very little. I started with a tiny income when I was at the theater. I think I started at $32,000 when I took that job in 2006. And eBay was always like, okay, I can't afford this, but if I sell, $100, $200. I can't afford this. And that was always my safety blanket. And why have I not given it up? I have not given it up because, again, it just is a security where I know that I can sell X amount if I had to, and it still generates income, and it's still something that I enjoy. There's the hunt, just like looking for real estate, where I get excited when I find that great deal. And that is why I've kept on it, and I continue to do it. I've, hired an employee that helps with this. So it's not as labor intensive, but it's one of those that I enjoy doing. So I'm not going to just toss it to the side because it's a fun hobby.
And obviously, with everything that you've told us thus far, Tom, right there, you're very much a no BS person, right? There's no excuses to get started, to be successful, to reach whatever destination you want to reach. In this case, it's eBay and real estate, right? Curious when you encounter people that, might be kind of glass half empty, right? Or like, I wasn't dealt the right, hand of cards and I can't do this. You could, Tom, because you're lucky, or your parents gave you this, or whatever the other reason and excuse, right? What's your secret sauce? What do you tell those people to say, yeah, absolutely, I can do it. You can do it. Anybody can do it, right? What's your secret?
I share my story because I get that all the time. Real estate isn't 65,000 in my market. Real estate isn't 25,000. It's just not possible. And I'm like, well, it is. I'm doing it still. I bought this house last year for 25,000 from the bank. It was really, really ugly. I built up a good team and we put it back together. So it's possible. It's not as easy as walking down the street and doing it, but I just say, okay, so what is possible? And same with like, I have too much debt and I can't take on a second job and I can't do this and I can't do that. Well, okay, what can you do? And it's the same thing with the roof on the crack house. We didn't have the money to put a full roof on, so we did what we had money for, and that's what was possible. It was $3,000. So I always answer back with, okay, I understand this. This is how I did it. What can you do? Can you walk dogs? Can you bake cookies? Is there something that you can do that's going to generate you some extra income that you enjoy? And that's really why I do eBay, because I still enjoy it. That can generate you the extra income and start moving the needle enough that your debt's going down, this is going down, that's going down. And when I work with people, they're floored. Like I was working with this client and her credit was in the 500s. And I'm like, you know what? I think if we just made some $25 payments on these student loans, it might move the needle enough. So we did. We started paying $25 on each one of these student loans. And sure enough, like her credit shot from 5 to 700. And she's like, $75 a month is moving the needle. And I'm like, I know. And that's all it takes. So sometimes it's just, can you do something, as opposed to just sitting here and saying, I can't do it. I can't do that. It's not in my market. It's not feasible. I don't have a team. What can you do to move that needle? What can you do to start, setting yourself up so you're not working into your 80s?
And I'm assuming, because you talked about generating more income and what you can do around that, which I totally get it, right? We still do that today with, consultation calls. We rent out like part of our driveway as a parking space on like, one of these apps and whatnot. So there are always ways to generate more income. But one thing that you haven't touched on, and it's even in your name, right? The Frugal Gay, right? It's like, yes, great to generate more income and to work eBay or otherwise to generate more income. But I'm assuming you pay a lot of attention to how you spend your money as well and where you spend it, right?
For sure. And I just did a thread the other day on Twitter about the difference between frugal and cheap, because people were like, oh, frugal is cheap. And I definitely do not feel that way, because we do nice trips and we do, expensive meals. And it's just the way that we approach it. Before we go to Texas de Brazil, we stop at Sam's Club and we buy the gift cards and save $25 off of our meal, but we're still having a great meal, even though we're using discount gift cards. So I think that frugality plays into it, because I'm being mindful of where I'm directing my money and how I'm assigning it and what I spend my money on. But I'm not, cutting out $3 coffees in the morning. I'm not cutting out those things that everyone's like, the $3 coffee, $5 coffee, that everyone loves to debate on social media. I think that being mindful, and that's really how I bought these properties, was I didn't take the expensive cruises. I took the discount cruise that no one else wanted, or I took the interior, door on that. So I think that frugality plays into it, and that's what really propelled me. Because when I applied for the first property in 2008, the bank was like, we're not going to loan you anything. You have too much debt. And I'm like, okay. And then I went and I got a second job at Ross, and I would fold clothes on the weekends and on the evenings when I'd get off work. And then I would drive my entire check across the street to Citibank and I'd hand it to them. And it took me a year of working a part-time job. But that played into how I was able to buy a property every year because I got creative and I didn't rely on just my checks and, oh, woe is me mentality.
Totally. I want to be mindful of time here and start getting you out of here, Tom, because I could talk all day here. Such an interesting background and so many different stories. But before we wrap this up, I did want to hear about this very famous story of yours about flipping bras to buy a house.
Flipping bras to buy a house. So this happened a while ago. And what this was, again, I'm an eBay flipper and I can spot value. And a lot of people struggle to see this. So there was a closeout store up in Ohio, and they had all of these Macy's bras. They were great name brands. They were great sizes. And from working retail, you know what sizes sell and what sizes don't. And I'm like, these have a lot of value, but not right here. And I started going store to store and buying them. And I had trunk loads. And I would literally, there was, it got to where we took a truck and we trucked them down, and we had a wholesaler set up here. So as quickly as I could peel off clearance stickers, they sold. And this wholesaler took them and resold them to another reseller. So I just saw the opportunity, and I saw that most of them were $1 to $2 bras that were name brand from a great store with great sizes. And I took them to where they did have value. And that's also, another thing that people overlook is, and that's why I do eBay, there's some winter items that I sell here in Texas that have no value, and I can get them for $1 or $2 down here, but they have great value in Minnesota because of the weather. And that's what I did with the bras. And it was just one of those that it kind of stuck with me, because now it's like people are like, hey, do you have bras? Do you have this? Do you have that? And this kind of stuck with me. But when I sold it, I turned around and I used that money as a purchase on a condo down here in Texas. And it's just a fun story to tell. And I mean, I had my grandma sitting there with like a butter knife peeling stickers with me and helping me peel stickers. So it was an experience, and it was funny too, because like after I was done, my dad's like, hey, I'm at the store and they have this many. Do you want them? And I'm like, we're done with bras, Dad, but thank you. So I the family knew, they saw the value in those, and they were like trained at that moment. They're like, oh, hey, I'm over here buying apples, but I see a whole bunch of bras at this price. Are these good bras? So it was a family event, and it was one of those that kind of propelled me ahead, because I, again, got creative instead of just saying, oh, I can't afford that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I feel like the whole theme of kind of your story here is just creativity, right? It's being creative to generate the income, being creative to buy the properties in this case. And we didn't even touch on this much, but you're buying a condo, or you bought a condo with the money you made from flipping the bras, which, as you know from talking to other real estate investors, condos are often no-nos. Investors don't like to touch them, right, because of HOAs or whatever it may be. Yet you found, opportunity where others weren't looking, and
they were the low point of entry. And I've sold those off, and I've bought single family and multifamily with them now, which is last year I bought 5 single family. And that's been my focus. So I have my favorites still in the pack. So I have a few condos, and I have one condo that's in a complex that looked like death when I bought it, but the property management is so fantastic, and they've upkept it so much now that I don't want to sell it, because it just continues to appreciate it. It's in the right spot. It was just a really rough complex. So yeah, I started where the other investors wouldn't go because of the dues and because of the restrictions. And that kept me moving, and that kept the needle moving just enough to where, okay, I'm actually generating income. Okay, I'm actually generating enough income that maybe I don't have to do this job that much longer. That's draining me, that I have to beg for PTO on. And that was definitely, that was the motivation behind all of the eBay stuff and the bra sales and all of the different purchases, because it was, how can I take ownership of my time? How can I make this work? And when I started, it was, how can I make more money? What's going to be a big enough net worth to get me out of here? And it really didn't end up being that at the end.
And that's just a perfect segue, because like I said, I could stay here and talk to you forever and hear about all these different stories, but I'm trying to get you out of here, Tom. Do you have a book recommendation for the audience here?
So I like Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week, but I also just read Alan Corey's House Fire, which I wish I would have read before, but it really connected with me as far as different ways of financing, because I was very conservative. So as I read it, I just thought it like, I wish I would have done this, because I probably would have had 10 extra doors earlier on. But that was a great book that I connected with and enjoyed, and ended up buying on Audible so I can listen to it when I'm in the car.
Awesome. And what about like a tool, an app, a piece of software that helps you just kind of get to where you are, helped you in the past, it still helps you today, kind of achieve success and get to where you are today?
This is very generic, but people don't realize this, but you can download the eBay app and you can just scan at different stores. You can go into TJ Maxx or Ross or all these stores and use the eBay app and click sold so you can see what's selling and start scanning those items. And that's a way for people to start without spending any money. You just have the eBay app and you use it as a tool to see value. And that's one thing, you know, people are like, hey, I got a million of these screensavers. And I'm like, are they selling? So that's where people mess up when they're looking at resale. eBay has this tool right here. It can tell you what they've sold for over the last 90 days. And I think that really, when I started using that, when that became available and I could just scan barcodes, it stepped up my eBay game, because it was like I didn't have to type. I didn't have to take pictures. It was just scanning and going. And it just really propelled my eBay store and ability.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Last question here for you, Tom. How can our audience help you and reach out to you if you so choose?
I am at the Frugal Gay 11 on all TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Most active on Twitter, so you're welcome to DM. My website is thefrugalgay.com, and they can reach me through any of those.
I love it. A fantastic follow on all social media. I know, because I do so and engage with a lot of what you share there. And I take inspiration from some of the housework and the rehab jobs that you do on your properties. I like those and send them over to my property manager. So thanks for that. Awesome follow, Tom. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you hanging out with us, and hopefully we'll have you back on here sometime soon.
Thank you for letting me share. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.